Good day. Today I'll be discussing Chapter 9, CRUD with Firebase. Um, and I'm here with my navigator Ulrich.
I am Ulrich, I'll be Tom's navigator.
Cool. So, Chapter 9, CRUD with Firebase. So yeah, mainly here in Chapter 9 we're working with creating a project in Firebase and connecting our database our database project in Firebase to our application. So what is Firebase? So Firebase is a platform developed by Google that provides a suitable cloud-based tool and services to help developers build, improve, and grow their applications. It includes features like real-time databases, user authentication, cloud storage, hosting, analytics, and push notifications, allowing developers to build scalable and secure applications quickly without managing back-end infrastructure. So it's mainly a database. So in relation to our React application, what it does is works as a back-end as a service, and it handles tasks such as user sign-in, data storage, and real-time updates. And yeah, basically integrate Firebase to manage app state with live data from Firestore, authenticate users easily, and deploy the web apps quickly using Firebase hosting. So that's how Firebase works in relation to our application. So this is Firebase here. As you can see, I created a project, and this is the database over here with all the data stored in it. Then I have this application that we created. It has CRUD functionalities, and it is connected to my Firebase database. So in this application, I can create a new user by clicking add, and basically add the email and a name as well. And when I click submit, that name is added to the table over here. And then you see the name or the user's details in the Firebase database over here, as you can see. So that's how the connection works. I can edit the user's details, right? By changing the name, and then the user's details are changed. As you can see, the username is changed, and it is also changed in the database as well. You can also delete a user by clicking delete. Then this dialog box pops up, and the user is deleted in the client side as well as in the database. As you can see, now there's 5 users there. So let's see how all of that was implemented in the code. So in order to get my Firebase working, my database working and connected to the application, I've placed this configuration object, which is basically the main idea of this is to connect the web application that I displayed now to the specific Firebase project, which is this project here, so that it can work with the database. And it has unique credentials over here and IDs and keys, and these values allow the app to access the Firebase services such as authentication, database, as well as storage. So that's in my index.js. So as you know, the index.js main thing is to launch the application by placing this component here. But before that, I've imported Firebase app authorization and Firestore so that you can use that. And then in my app.js, imported the database from Firebase so that we can use or connect the database to the application and use the data in there to render it to the client side. So in my browser router tags over here, we have switch, and within my switch tags I've placed URL paths over here, mainly for editing a user's profile or page, as well as adding a new user to the client side as well as to the database, and then one for the home page of the user as well. So let's start off by explaining the user's home page. So essentially here, as you can see, imported Firestore and authorization from Firebase, and I have my component user, and within my constructor there's the props, and basically within this dot state, it's the state of the user is an empty array. So yeah, this stores all the user's records in the Firebase database. Here I have show delete dialog set to false, so it controls whether the delete confirmation dialog is shown. So basically over here, when you click remove, this is the delete dialog box. Then selected user stores all the users that you want to delete in a dictionary. Then here in this component deadmount function, this method runs once after the component is displayed, and using firebase.database.ref with the home page URL there, in this function, in this method here, we're connecting to the Firebase real-time database. So this is what connects us to the database essentially, and we're looping through the database using for each, and then it pushes these values to the state as well by using push user, and it pushes it to return ARR, which is this empty array, which represents the database or the users that will be displayed in the database. This sets the state of users to the amounts of users that are here in the array or the database. Then here is basically for adding a new user. So essentially when we add a user in our client side, right, that's what that is for, that function. And when that add button is clicked, it sends the user to the add route where user form is shown. So now that I clicked it, the user form is shown because it sends us to that specific route, which is /add. And that was basically in my app.js. As you could see over here, I placed it in my switch. That's what makes it work. So it renders that specific component. Then over here I have my open delete dialog function. This function is called when the remove is clicked, opens a confirmation dialog and saves the selected user. Then this is to close the dialog. Then there's a delete function which removes the selected user from Firebase by using the unique key. So basically when you click delete, then as soon as you click delete, then the user is deleted from the database. So basically remove and click delete, and this specific user gets deleted from the Firebase database, as well as the front end. So it removes them by a unique key identifier. So basically, when you click remove, it finds the unique ID key for that specific user and deletes the user. This is a render over here, which will render basically the table. As you can see, there's the format. So populates the table rows with database objects, and then it loops through all the users in the state and creates a table row for each user. And we have basically here a constant variable, and in it we are using .map to loop through the users of their current state, and setting in this arrow function, setting basically the structure of the table over here with the user key, username, and email, as well as the edit button and the remove button, as we can see here. Edit button, remove, email, and username. Then this is the final render output, showing the headings: username, email, edit, and delete. And this is just the form. This is basically representing the dialog box that asks you if you're sure if you want to delete a user over here. That's the user component. Now in my user form.js, if you remember, I've placed the URL paths to add a specific user to the database in the front end, as well as editing a user's form, right, or user's details. So this takes us to the user form to edit the user details, and this takes us to the user form to add a new user. So this is the user form component that is accessed when we click those specific URL paths. So from Firebase, I've imported auth, Firestore, and the database this time in order to link the functionality of creating a user and editing a user, linking that to the database to update the database or to add new users to the database. So over here we have basically our component with title and ID as variables, and in the constructor in here, in this .state, username and email are empty strings, so it initializes state with empty username and email. Then in this if statement, we're checking if the ID is there for the specific user and it's passed via URL. If yes, it's set to the edit mode so that you are able to edit a user. So basically, when you click edit, as you can see here, there's the ID for the specific user, and because of this if statement, if it's set to true, then this is shown. You're able to access the user's details to edit the form because of the ID. Then component did mount function in here, basically it's for editing the user's form. It fetches existing data from Firebase using the ID. So with the if statement, if this.id is true, then basically what happens is the ID is attached to the home page URL, and you're basically what is displayed is the user's current details before editing the form. As you can see here, the current details, because we access the user's ID. So here it basically updates the component state with fetched data, sets the state using set state for the specific instance, and username and email is attached to username and email. Then we have a render with the title, uses a formic to create a form, Within here we have enable reinitialize set to true, which ensures the form updates when the state changes. And then here initialize value sets the starting values of the form fields. So how it does that is it sets here username for the state to username, and then the email as well. Then this is for validation logic. Basically when we're editing the form, or when we basically creating or adding a new user, it validates the information that we inputting. So checks if the email exists when we putting the email in, or well, it checks if there's an email being inputted. If it's not, it shows this error message. Checks the format of the email being inputted. Checks if it's less than 10, and if it is, then address is too short, and it does the same validation for the password as well. Then we have an on submit. This is basically essentially just for submitting the form after editing it or adding a new user. But mainly here this is for editing a user, because as you can see we have update. Update function is called as soon as we click that submit button over here, and then the user is edited in the database in the front end. And then also here this is for adding a user. This is submitting, so basically when you're submitting the form essentially. So when we edit a user and add a user, all of that is updated in the database, or user is added to the database, as I showed earlier. That's for the user form, for editing and adding a new user. Then lastly over here, we did an activity. I went ahead and basically the objective basically just adding all the students in class to the database by using a JSON object over here. So I have a key, so I have a JSON object with a key, right? Student 1. Attached to this key is another object with 2 key value pairs, username and email. That takes the username and the email. This creates one profile, or basically one student over here. And then I did the same thing for student 2, 3, and 4. And that is stored within this JSON object. After doing that, the main objective is to get this onto the database, onto the Firebase database. Doing that, essentially, basically coming here and importing that JSON file, essentially. And after importing it, it shows over here all the details, or shows all the students with the email and username, as well as the ID that I created, which is the key. So student 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now because it's on the database and we connected the database to the application, the names and the emails are shown over here. I can edit the names as well. As soon as I edit it, it shows here the edited version, and also in the database here. So that essentially covers chapter 9, working with Firebase, and how the application works with the database.